it's an important week ahead. Not only is it Stephen Foster weekend, but it's also closing weekend here at Churchill Downs. I'm Gabby Gaudet, joined by Caton Bredar, and it feels like a bit of a whirlwind Wednesday, doesn't it? I know it's our Monday, but we are really hitting the ground running. It's a great card today, but it obviously builds up to a tremendous weekend card.
Well, there are so many elements going on, right? Most especially the Stephen Foster, but that's tied into closing weekend. We have a mandatory payout if it doesn't get hit in the meantime on Sunday of the Derby City Pick 6, which has been growing and growing and growing. And it's hot. I mean, we are steamy up here,
yes.
And even more so in the paddock. But regardless of the conditions, typically Stephen Foster Day is a warm one.
Yeah, it's a steamy lineup of races on Saturday. Fleur-de-Lis, Grade 2 event, Breeders' Cup Win and You're In Challenge. We're going to see the return of Torpedo Anna. The Tepin Stakes, Kelly's Landing, Wise Dan, of course, the Grade 1 Stephen Foster Win and You're In for the Breeders' Cup Classic. And then we finalize the day with the American Derby. Let's take a look at the Stephen Foster as it is assembled this particular year. And this is something that we've kind of been building up to for the past couple of weeks. We've heard about some of the horses, and now they've finally entered. First Mission, Mindframe, Skippy Longstocking, Sierra Leone Breeders' Cup Classic winner, Mystic Dan coming back from his last win, but obviously the winner of the Kentucky Derby, Hit Show, Dubai World Cup winner. I mean, this is a tremendous field.
You know, every year the Stephen Foster is among the top older horse races in the country. But this year, I think you have even more intrigue and a depth of quality that we haven't seen across the board, starting, of course, with the Breeders' Cup Classic winner, Sierra Leone, who in any other situation I think would be an overwhelming favorite, but coming in off of his last effort, which some would feel was a little subpar, it adds maybe to the value here. But when you look at what happened with Sierra Leone in the Breeders' Cup, in the Classic, Chad had pointed him all year long after the Derby Trail for that moment, and he really answered the call. The distance was perfect, the setup was great, and he ran a tremendous race. I think he was entitled to be a little rusty coming off the layoff for his first start of the year off of that effort. So I look for bigger and better things for Sierra Leone and the Foster.
He also didn't have a ton of pace in that race, but that could be a theme again in the Stephen Foster. There doesn't appear to be much pace, and I think that could work to the advantage of a horse like Mystic Dan, who I think is a little bit more tactical, Caton.
And it's interesting because when he won the Kentucky Derby, I would say not tactical so much as able to get the mile and a quarter better than anybody else on the day. He wasn't that far in front of Sierra Leone when at the finish, but he's one of the first Derby winners to come back and hit the winner's circle again in his most recent start, the Blame Stakes, which we're looking at right now. And he did show a different dimension, in my opinion, being a little bit handier in the early stages, a little bit sharper, and really still finishing with the same gusto that we saw last year in the Derby in his biggest triumph. I think he's far from a one-dimensional horse, and that really puts him in a good spot. We also know he absolutely loves Churchill Downs, and that may give him a little bit of an edge over some of his rivals. He still has something to prove, though, in putting together back-to-back top-notch efforts against a field like this.
Yeah, I thought his race against Saudi Crown was really good, and he showed that ability to be more forwardly placed, and once again came back in the Blame and got the win. But this is by far the toughest field that he has faced in quite some time. Mindframe towards the inside, the number 2 horse sent out by Todd Pletcher. You and I were just talking about this off air. It's funny because I remember doing several interviews with Todd Pletcher. Of course, he sent out Mindframe. That was his comeback race, as well as, what was the other? Who else did he have in there?
Now I've forgotten, but was it Fearless? No, not Fearless. I mean Fierceness.
Anyway, well, Mindframe. This horse ran superbly. Now, I do think that he got everything to go his way this day. He got a fast pace. He closed. He's able to kind of have this type of running style, especially going one-turn distances. But the question for you, Caton, do you think he's just as good at 2 turns, or is he better?
I think he could be better. I really do. I thought that was a very good effort, but To be honest, I think he's more effective with the 2 turns to work with because he has the opportunity to kind of put horses away versus in those shorter 1-turn races, he has to work so hard and still stay fierce at the finish. He only won by a neck to Banishing, a nice host in the Churchill Downs. Now, maybe the sloppy track wasn't working to his advantage either, but for what it's worth, he's 4 for 6 lifetime, and I thought his seconds in the Haskell and the Belmont Stakes were both very, very good efforts. He was behind Dornoch in both those instances when Dornoch was at the top of his game and among the top 3-year-olds in the nation. So I don't hold those losses against him, and I'm really eager to see what he does in a spot like this.
And he could be controlling speed at this distance. And I think he might not be the best horse in the race, but from a tactical standpoint, he could have the upper hand. First Mission is on the rail. He comes out of a really good effort last time out in the Grade 2 Oaklawn Handicap. It was his best race on form. I mean, he earned a 109 buyer that day. He beat that Grade 2 company by 2 lengths. He beat Skippy Longstocking in that event as well. What do you think about him coming back to Churchill Downs?
I like him. I think that some of his better efforts were at Churchill, albeit not the company that he's facing here. But I also feel like he is a true 1 1/8 horse. When you look at this win at Oaklawn, you have to keep in mind that we haven't seen the Oaklawn form hold up very effectively here at Churchill, especially at this level. But I kind of think you have to look at the horse as well. And the horse has shown flashes of brilliance along the way. So I don't think you can dismiss him or hold Oaklawn against him quite as strongly as you might other horses.
Well, I think another thing to that, too, is horses who were kind of running the last weekend or the last couple of weeks at Oaklawn haven't come back and really maintained their form. This horse has been off since April.
Yes.
So I think he's been able to kind of recoup and refresh.
And I kind of look at his form even before Oaklawn in making the assessment about where he stands against this field.
All right, well, the Stephen Foster is certainly the headliner of Saturday, but we have some incredible horses on the undercard. Here's a look at the lineup of horses that you will potentially see on the undercard on Saturday here at Churchill Downs. Torpedo Anna in the Grade 2 Fleur-de-Lis. Talk about a race. Man, the winners of that historically has been incredible. Fort Washington back in action in the Wise Dan. Booth, that very fast
I'm excited
sprinter.
to see him.
Yeah,
with his speed, he's electric.
It's his Tastic American Derby, and then Lush Lips in the Tepin.
And, you know, the Tepin on any other day would be a marquee event, but because it's sandwiched with all these other races, you maybe don't pay it quite as much attention as it deserves because it's a very good and very competitive race.
Let's take a look at the Fleur-de-Lis and Torpedo Anna coming back after a disappointing effort in the La Troyenne and who she's going to be lining up against on Saturday. Torpedo Anna signed on as the morning line favorite at odds of 3 to 5. Bit of a small field coming back, but Jin, she's kind of that up-and-coming filly. Brendan Walsh, since he's had her, she's been in tremendous form.
She finished behind Royal Spa in the Shawnee last out, and Royal Spa is another one who's been on a little bit of a roll. But, yeah, I am intrigued to see what Jin does here. I don't think that while she got a very good trip, she did get carried a bit wide in the Shawnee, and I think that cost her a little at the end behind Royal Spa. She kind of had to chase throughout the entire race, and you can see her off the turn. She is 4 or 5 wide, and we didn't see very many horses on that day able to rally and kick clear in that far lane. Now, that's kind of the exception to the rule because lately we have seen horses kicking clear and running really well wide, but I didn't feel she lost much in defeat. I still think, though, that you have to respect Royal Spa as well in this race because Royal Spa drew off and won pretty nicely at the 1 1/16. So I'm excited to see what she can do at a 1 1/8. She's kind of the new shooter in the group of fillies and mares because she was struggling a little against Grade 3 competition. And now all of a sudden put together a win on a muddy track in the Heavenly Cause and came right back in a much tougher Shawnee and was able to win even more decisively.
A lot of people were saying going into the La Troyenne that this was probably too many tough races for Torpedo Anna in a very short period of time. Do you think this is enough time for her to recoup after that last one?
I do, in part because that last race, she didn't win. She didn't run her A game. So there might be more in the tank as a result of her running a subpar effort. And on top of it, she's had almost 6 weeks since the La Troyenne to recover. I also think if you look at her work pattern since that last race in the La Troyenne, she came back to run a really good workout on June 14th, and then on either side of those works were kind of those workmanlike efforts that I think keep her in good form. But to me, that was a sign she's back on June 14th when she woke up like that.
Yeah, and keep in mind, she did get bumped pretty significantly going into the first turn, and Kenny McPeak, even in hindsight, kind of thought that maybe that was a little bit of an excuse. Talking about notable winners of the Fleur-de-Lis, well, Torpedo Anna, if she can win this, she definitely would be on this list, as she... Obviously, her resume last year speaks for itself, but She Dares the Devil won this race back in 2022. Of course, Kentucky Oaks winner, Latruska, Midnight Bizou, Elate. I mean, the list goes on and on. I didn't even mention Rachel Alexandra, Royal Delta, Forever Unbridles. This is quite a list of fillies.
It really is. I mean, when I look at Rachel Alexandra, Royal Delta, I'm looking at some of the best fillies and mares that I've seen compete. Latruska was certainly head of the class. She Dares the Devil winning the Oaks kind of is following this year. We see Torpedo Anna trying to kind of do what she did as well. And I would be, let me put it this way, I wouldn't be surprised if she gets beat, but I would be very surprised if she doesn't run a top effort.
Yes, I will agree with you on that. And sometimes those smaller fields, from a tactical standpoint, can get a little tricky. And as it is only a field of 5 going postward in this year's Fleur-de-Lis.